I'm Scott Simi, Chief Content Editor with Indro Robotics, and joining me on today's edition of our Sound Byte micro podcast, which I believe is episode 20, is Luke Corbett, Indro's head of R&D sales. Welcome, Luke.
Thanks again for having me, Scott.
So, Luke, as you know, Indro does a lot of things. We're perhaps best known for our custom robots and drones that we build for clients, ranging from industrial to academic and more. But we also develop and sell our own products. So our Sentinel inspection robot comes to mind. But in addition to that, we develop and invent proprietary software and hardware. On the software side, we're particularly known for our Indro controller interface and our autonomy stack. On the hardware side, our Indro Commander is on a lot of robots out there. And because it's related to today's topic, let's start with an explanation of what Indro Commander is.
Yeah, so Indro Commander is really a platform agnostic brain box for robots. To date, it's specifically been for UGVs, so wheeled and track-based platforms. By default, it comes standard with compute, connectivity, and power distribution, and all of that's within an IP-rated enclosure with waterproof ports and top-sided access, primarily for research and development, so our clients can gain access to the internal hardware if needed. And then from there, we have, various bundles to accommodate different needs. So there's a Connect version, which includes 4G and 5G connectivity, drive cameras and 360 cameras. There's a SLAM version, which adds 3D LiDAR and depth cameras. And then the Navigate version has all of that in addition to GPS and IMU.
Today, we're talking about a newer piece of hardware that kind of stands on the shoulders of Commander, and it's called Cortex Lite. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so Cortex Lite is like the standard version of Commander, so inclusive of compute, power distribution, and connectivity, but it comes in a much smaller form factor. And as a result, we're no longer limited to just UGVs. We can now put it onto any system and turn it into a piece of equipment for development or a smart robot with the right software and hardware integrations. So this could be things like quadrupeds, humanoids, drones, and even long-term, we're looking at outfitting other legacy equipment like ATVs, Humvees, tractors, forklifts, electric vehicles, etc. This system has a ton of different I/O ports, and our software installed on it allows for plug-and-play sensor integrations, especially any sensor that has a ROS driver. And then similarly to Commander, we'll offer, a variety of perception and awareness bundles, along with mounting solutions to accommodate it on both the platforms that we sell, but also on the platforms that our clients are creating and deploying.
Now, you kind of touched on it right there. So we can integrate Cortex Lite on a platform, virtually any platform for a client. What advantage does that give the end user?
Yeah, so on the commercial side, I'm a big believer that this is going to create a lot of homogeneity in the user experience. Scott, I know you love drones, and we both know there are tons of DJI drones out there. And despite coming in, different shapes and sizes, there's a very similar user experience that makes it feel intuitive to fly, regardless of which drone you're actually flying. We envision a similar future for robots, and, Cortex Lite is, kind of our first step into making that a reality.
Now, I don't want you to give away all our secrets, but what are you able to tell us about what's inside Cortex in terms of compute, software, and its capabilities, including sensor integration?
Yeah, so the base version in terms of hardware has, 100 TOPS of compute power, which is, particularly useful for a lot of the artificial intelligence, reinforcement learning, machine vision development that we're seeing in the market today. In addition to that, we add 4G, 5G, and Wi-Fi connectivity, and then that power distribution module that accommodates, I think it's over 10 different I/O options, anything from USB-C to Ethernet and more. In terms of software, we preload it with our most basic version of Indro controller. And, that gives our clients the capacity to do real-time data visualization and remote development. And of course, this can be further upgraded to include teleoperation, autonomy, or anything else that's needed.
And for any listeners who aren't familiar with the acronym TOPS that Luke threw out a moment ago, that's trillions of operations per second. So 100 trillion operations per second, which is very difficult for me to get my head around. Now, Cortex Lite is also one of those products that a client can purchase as a standalone. What does that enable for the end user in terms of ease of integration and operation if they're developing their own robot or drone?
Yeah, so if a client's building a quadruped or a humanoid, which is, kind of common these days, and they're doing it from scratch, there are just so many problems to solve on the mechanical side of things, that adding our brain to the system can dramatically reduce the overall development time they expect to incur. For clients with an existing platform, actually, that's maybe gotten a little dated at this point, but they still want to do some cutting edge research. They can upgrade the brain either by replacing what's already there or in addition to, so that they're not held back by the capabilities and limitations of hardware.
Now, if there's a Cortex Lite, does that mean there's another version in development?
Yeah, the light version is in place as we develop, ironically, what will be an even more compact version with a custom multi-layer PCB. This will, eventually be even lighter and even smaller in stature.
Now, size matters, and when you're adding things to robots and drones, smaller and lighter is often better. Why is that?
Yeah, in the case of drones, for instance, it's simple. More weight equals less flight time. So if you have, a smaller system and, a lot of folks today are trying to push the boundaries of drones. And to do that, we need to be adding state-of-the-art compute systems. And, that's really what Cortex is making possible here. In the case of robots, the smaller size just means more real estate for payloads. So, we've got clients wanting to add arms and PTZ cameras and acoustic sensors and LiDAR and wireless charging and even more. And there's only so much real estate on the robot and payload capacity, that this smaller form factor solution is going to enable even more, payload optionality.
So, Luke, is Cortex Lite shipping now?
Yeah, we're able to send out Cortex Lite systems today, and we anticipate the full version of Cortex, that smaller variant, being released in Q1 or Q2 of 2026.
I suppose price varies depending on whether you want our full autonomy stack, etc. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, autonomy requires the addition of the perception and awareness bundles, along with our software stack, and the same can be said for teleoperations. So we've got various different configurations that work within the budgets and the requirements of each of our clients.
Great. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, we're making a big bet here on what the future of robotics looks like. We're all in on this modular approach to improve the user experience of robots and drones, reduce time to deployment, reduce the total cost of these systems, and add all the required functionality to tackle any and all applications our clients approach us with. Cortex is core to our strategy, and it positions us as the go-to company for building solutions that don't exist today. That's what we do best. And, there's nothing more satisfying than making our clients' visions a reality.
Luke Corbett, Head of R&D Sales for Indra Robotics, thank you so much for your time.
The pleasure was mine.